Alrighty everyone, so today we're going to go over how to overclock your PC for an everyday gaming experience. So I haven't really seen an overclock of this configuration with a 12700K for a normal everyday user that wants to get the most out of their system but be reliable and not be too stressed out. We are not trying to push this and get high marks on or high scores on 3D Mark or go for any glory runs. This PC is sitting in a pretty warm room, so just I wanted to have it in the most realistic environment, and make sure that the customer that I built this computer for has a great gaming experience and gets the most out of his system. So without further ado, let's get started. So we are in the BIOS right now. This is a Z690 Asus TUF Gaming motherboard, and we're gonna go over how to overclock this 12700KF. If you aren't sure what the F means, so first we'll go over the K. So 12700K, so the K means that it can be overclocked, and the F is just that there's no integrated graphics, so you actually can save a little bit of money. If you're using a dedicated GPU, then you do not need just the 12700K. You can get the F and save a little bit of money. So as we're looking at this screen, you can see right here the default RAM speed is 2133 megahertz, and with XMP enabled, it brings it to 3600. This says 3603. Here are your timings. This is 3600 megahertz C16 RAM. I haven't overclocked the RAM at all. What's just technically XMP is an overclock, but all this is just XMP enabled, and I left it there for the customer. Yes, you can get more out of the RAM by increasing the voltage, or you can bring the timings down, or even speed the RAM up. But for this, we just left a XMP, which is just fine for the customer. So you're in this menu here, and then you want to go to advanced mode, so F7. All right, we'll get straight to it. Won't even waste any time. So you go into AI Tweaker, and then you'll have your menu here. So you can see I selected XMP1 and XMP right here, DDR4, 3600 megahertz. BCLK frequency, you set that to 100. And then next, enable Asus multi-core enhancement to remove all the limits. All right, just copy everything that I have here, and then you'll see that your DRAM frequency is set to 3600. And then next up, where you're making some pretty good changes here, is your by-core usage or your performance core ratio. You have a couple options. You can do sync all cores and keep it 5.1, 5.2, or you can do it the way I did for more everyday user gaming ratio. We'll just keep it by core usage. So we're not trying to push this system for records or anything like that, like I said earlier. So you'll set by core usage. First core we set, so if one core is running, it's gonna be running at 5.2 gigahertz. If we have two cores running, it'll be running at 5.1. Same with 3 and 4. If we're utilizing 5, the CPU is utilizing 5 cores, or up to 8. So this has 8 physical cores. The CPU will be at 5 gigahertz. So you also have 4 E cores on the 12700K. So you'll sync all cores on that, and then that one 40 is where was the highest I felt was stable there. So you come down. Next menu is your Digi plus VRM. Okay, So here I did change the load line calibration to level 6. I did have a problem at level 4 with it crashing, so I let it go up a little bit to level 6. No problem there. And it's been stable, no problems. Next up is your internal CPU power management. Come down here, and then you can go to, wait, let me see here. No, we didn't change anything here. Let's go back, head down. So next up, make sure your ring down bin is disabled. You can play with these numbers a little bit, 40 to 42. I just kept this at 41. Seems to be good so far, no problems there. Adaptive voltage, you want that enabled. That way you can set your manual voltage. I have it set to 1.35. I haven't had any problems there. Obviously you want to have the lowest the lowest voltage possible to keep it stable. So less voltage, less heat. But you want to make sure you have adequate voltage, and you can make sure you can test all that through all your benchmarks. So the next menu you actually need, so after you finish up that last step I showed you, you can go to advanced, and then you want to go to CPU configuration, and then you come down, and then you go to CPU power management control, and then you can go down to C states and enable this. That just lets the processor throttle down faster when there's no load. Just trying to be as efficient as possible. If you don't need the performance, it's not there. When you do need the performance, it's there. It's a good happy medium setting, in my honest opinion. And that is about it. Also, keep in mind that no two CPUs are the same. So one might be able to overclock more efficiently than another. So your settings might differ, but a good starting point, you start here, and you can keep testing it. Maybe you want to have 2 cores at 5.2 gigahertz, so you change this to a 5.2. Boom. Test that, run some games. If I had a problem here where I haven't seen this one before, but the VRM was getting too warm. So all I did was I turned some settings down, and I haven't had a single issue. The computer was actually artifacting, which is typically a GPU related issue. However, if your VRMs are getting hot and they overheat, that can cause that problem as well. And the computer won't shut off. It'll just crash. The game will crash. Usually a CPU related issue does cause a crash where the computer actually restarts. However, if you're seeing artifacting, it's not always the GPU. It can be VRM as well. So put that back. So scrolling through, yeah, so just copy everything here, and you'll just monitor. Make sure you, if you guys are wondering, if you have an AIO, which you should have an AIO at least for cooling, it'll be set to, when you come in here, your CPU fan speed will be set to monitor. You will have to come into monitor and then go into fan speed monitor and turn CPU fan speed, hit ignore. That way that it boots up and gets rid of that error. Okay. And you'll just save changes and reset, and you should be all set. Alright guys, so when you save and reset in your BIOS and you get back to the desktop, I like to go over my settings and do some testing to make sure everything is stable. There are multiple programs you can use to do benchmarks. You have Cinebench, Blender, Intel Extreme Tune Utility. You also have CPU-Z, which I'll be using in this video. We're going to just do a little stress test on the CPU. Make sure, temperatures are stable and all the parameters are operating correctly. So first thing is, if you don't have this, you need to download Hardware Monitor. It is very essential. It's free, and every computer should have it on there. It gives you an overview of all your temperatures, your voltages, pretty much everything in your PC that you could ever want to know. So definitely download that. It gives you a much better understanding of what's going on in your CPU, and it shows you if you might need to make some changes in the BIOS. So another thing here is I have my Lean Lee fan controller program up here because I want to make sure that all the fans kick on and speed up like they're supposed to. The setting is set to pulse wave modulation, known as PWM. That's pretty much automatic. As the temperature goes up, the fans spin faster. So depending on heat load, the fans will spin up or slow down depending on how much load there is. So if you're in CPU-Z, you want to go to bench. You want to have your hardware monitor up, and you're going to go ahead and stress your CPU. But before we do, let's go over some of these settings in here. So the main ones that you really care about is your first. You want to start with your V core. This is the voltage that you have set in your BIOS. I set mine to 1.35, so you see that right here. Next up is your CPU temperature. So we are at 28C, 27C, which is very good for idle, for just an AIO. We have a 360 millimeter Lean Lee AIO doing all the cooling for us, and it does a pretty good job. And 27 is for idle is pretty good. You come down here, and another thing is your vid. This is what the CPU is calling for the cores. So since we have everything throttled down, if we don't need it, that's why it's so low. You'll see this go up. It'll call for more voltage when it thinks it needs it. Your core temperatures, so your package temperature, your CPU temperature, 27, 28, and then all your core temperatures are very close to it, so that's really good. Like, they look all pretty even. And then lastly is your clock speeds. So as you can see, they're going to vary all over the place because I have it set to throttle down as much as possible when it doesn't need doesn't need to be throttled up or for the load. So we just keep it as low as possible. It doesn't need it. So the power options are set to balanced as well. So we'll go back up here and we'll go ahead and stress the CPU. So watch our V-core in our vid as we go ahead and stress it. Okay, so first thing you can hear is the fans spin up. They are spinning up nicely. They're pretty fast too. This one is, these are going around 1800 RPM. So very good speed. You can see our CPU temperature is already at 78 degrees. You can see our V-core went down. It's only requiring 1.3 volts. However, our vid's calling for 1.36 volts. We don't need that. So that's what the vid wants, 1.36. You don't need that. So this is what you actually need, 1.3 volts. All right. Come down here. All right. So you can see your P cores here, your physical cores. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then your efficiency cores are going to be colder. So as you can see there. So you want to run this for a while and verify that your temperatures are stable and they're not continually slowly going up. You want it to peak at a certain temperature. Next up here is you can see our core clock speeds. Core 1, it's called core 0, but this is technically core 1. So core 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I have that set in the BIOS so that it uses all 8 cores. It's going to run at 5 gigahertz, and it's doing that just right here. It's a little bit less, but right around 5 gigahertz. And I have all the E cores set to 4 gigahertz, and you can see that those are set to that right now. So as we continue monitoring our package temperature, you can see that it is maintaining its temperature and it's not creeping up. So this is a stable overclock for this program. Now, this doesn't mean that this, would pass in like Cinebench. It did pass in Cinebench, but just because it passes in one program doesn't mean it's going to pass in another program. Now, Cinebench is, off the top of my head, the most stringent test you can run. It really pushes your CPU to the ultimate limits. And a good rule of thumb is if it passes Cinebench, it's probably going to pass every other program, at least from what I gather on that. But yeah, that's about it. Hopefully your temperatures are stable like mine, and everything's running smoothly for you guys, whoever's doing this overclock. But that's what you can expect from this gaming everyday daily driver overclock. This is what most people need. Most people need a everyday overclock that can do everything and not crash. So hopefully this video gets around so people can get these settings and get their PC set up, because the majority of the people I talk to that got pre-built PCs, unfortunately they went the pre-built PC route. Those companies don't overclock it. They don't even set XMP, and the customer doesn't know what settings for what. So they bought a PC that can overclock, but they're running at stock clock speeds. They're literally throwing performance out, and they don't know it. So that's the issue with going pre-built. Now, Gamers Nexus actually does a lot of reviews on pre-builts, and if that doesn't sound like a nightmare to you after watching a few of these videos, then I don't know what is. That's why I urge people to start building computers themselves, save them a lot of money, and get what you pay for. Alrighty guys, so that's going to do it for today's video. I hope this video helps as many people as possible to get better performance out of the computer. And if you're in a pre-built computer that can overclock, that you follow these steps and settings so that you can at least get more for your money, because companies are not going to overclock the systems and then send them to you. They're just not going to. They don't have the time to spend adjusting settings and testing like I do in all my PCs. All my PCs I build, they go through several hours of testing. I make sure it's absolutely perfect so that the customer will not have any problems. So, all right, that's it. I will see you in the next one.